I think that the landscape of Christian hip hop and R&B right now is honestly in an amazing place. I think we have so many diverse artists to where you're not just getting one thing every single time. And I feel like people are unapologetically afraid to be themselves, but unapologetically afraid to give you quality while still challenging you in your faith with every song. So I feel like it's in a great place, and I'm excited to see just so many people discover the music, but discover it in a way that is at a peak with creativity, excellence, but also subject content. I think for me, the way I navigate having, mainstream palatable music while at the same time honoring my beliefs is really just walking in authenticity. I feel like if you're really called to do music, to do hip hop, like it's something that just kind of flows naturally out of you just because of hip hop culture. And then from that, it's really just speaking on what you love. So whatever's inside of you kind of flows out. So I love God. So that's going to flow out in everything I do. So as long as I don't try to be somebody else, I feel like, God will always flow out in my music. And then just being someone who was raised in hip hop culture, I feel like you're always going to get the mainstream sounding music because I ain't going to put out something that's trash. I'm honestly honored to be considered a trailblazer of this growing genre just because, it helped shape my life. I feel like Christian hip hop really changed my outlook on life because the music I listen to, I feel like really does influence me and my actions. So for me to be a trailblazer of this new generation, I feel like I'm honored and I'm so grateful to see, the people's lives who are going to be impacted by the music I make. One thing that makes my style so different from others is just my ability to experiment. One thing we always do in the studio is we don't put any limits or barriers on what we're about to make and say, oh, it has to be this. So I think with that, and then once you get all your different musical influences poured into you, I think what comes out is always just like a melting pot, which becomes original. Mixed with that, plus my love for fashion, my love for just kind of being bright, being bubbly, I think that comes out with just my color choices of what I wear, with my soundscapes of what I create, just how the music feels alive. And yeah, I think that's why I end up being different than some other artists who you might see. One way I've seen my music impact listeners is their belief to keep going. So a lot of my music is very motivational to be like, hey, like be who God calls you to be, forget the haters and tap in. And so I think with that, a lot of people who maybe feel like they don't have a support system, they're like, man, like I feel like I have a friend through the music who relates to where I'm at. And of course, I'm always doing it from a biblical perspective. So I think that it also reminds them like, oh, this is who God says I am. And oh, I didn't know like you could be Christian and like normal. I think mixing all that together, I think people start realizing like, oh, I can tap into God, I can be myself, and I can believe in what he's telling me to do and have confidence to move in that with a full force. One way I like to use my voice outside of music to inspire people is really like life talks, honestly. So that can range from podcasts to like life talks on Instagram or YouTube. And I like to just use my voice really to instill like the boldness and the confidence that I've received from just my walk with God and like pour that into others. So like as I learn a lesson, as I learn something new that I feel like is life-changing, I don't want to keep it to myself. I'm like, let me tap in. I like to call a lot of my homies the besties. So I'm like, all right, bestie, here's something new that we learned today. So we're going to grow together. And so I feel like that's one thing I like to do and pour into others. It's very interesting to see like what's the biggest highlight of my career. Honestly, I'm honored for everything that's happened. I think the Grammys reaching out to me and like wanting to write articles about me and then even having some Grammy nominations from some of my works has been probably one of the biggest highlights of my career. And then an upcoming tour that I'm doing is a really dope highlight because it's gonna be across like 30 cities and with some of my favorite gospel artists. So I think those are some of the highlights I've been able to experience with my career and just see the music go beyond just the church to new places. Coming up, I have an album on the way. Stay tuned. It's a situation, so I'm super excited for it. It's gonna be something very vibrant. The theme of the album is breakthrough. So it's just talking about how I was able to get out of a dark place and break through into the next level that God has for me. And so it walks through all the different areas of life, from when I was sad, when I was depressed, how I got my belief back, how I, stayed prayed up to maintain that belief. And I'm really excited because it's going to show, I think, a new dynamic of my artistry, how I've grown. And yeah, I'm really excited for people to hear it and to experience it. One thing I want people to know about me is really, I want you just to tap into God, honestly. Like, I feel like everything I do and everything that flows through me, it's really just to honor what God has given me. And so I feel like from the music to the dancing to all of that, like it's all fun, but I'm really grateful to be able to do it just to give glory to God and to show people like, man, like he changed my life and he really can change your life, like if you tap in. So I feel like, yeah, everything that he's even given me, it just reflects back to him. I feel like that's one thing I want people to know about me.